October.
There's Josh.
There's,
You might want to pick up one of the,
Oh, okay. Oh, I got an office without that.
okay.
There you go.
Thanks.
Chair recognizes it's 4:04 and we have a quorum. I'd like to call the order of the Airport Authority for October 16th to order. First order of business is the approval of the airport minutes for the September 18th regular meeting. I think they were in your package.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes pass.
Who wrote these there in an unusually nice format?
I did.
You did.
Unusually nice.
Congratulations.
Unusually nice. Well, okay. The second one is approval of the special call meeting that we had the day really before our regular meeting. I sent these out. I hope you did have a chance to peruse those because I did write those myself from memory. I think they captured the essence of the meeting, but there was a lot of sidebars and a lot of give and take in the group discussions. I think it really makes sense in concert with the plan that Hank sent out this afternoon. I think reading these with that plan makes sense. Do you agree with that, Vince?
I do.
Okay, so do we have an approval of the minutes for the special call meeting of September 17th? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Don't we need a motion in a second before we do
What?
the vote?
Yeah, okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Do I have an approval, do I have let's vote. Is all those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes pass for both meetings. ALDOT FAA grant for the East Side Construction Project. We had a pre-construction meeting, I guess, 2 weeks ago on Monday. Yeah, and then I got a notification last night that the construction time clock has started, and I guess that means mobilization, and I guess they have all the permits. Is that right?
Well, that means that the clock's basically started. They haven't started actual construction yet because they're waiting on their ADM permit to get issued. We normally add about 30 days into the contract time for procurement of that permit. And what we don't want to do is just not start time, because then they will naturally start if they got work in other places. So we start the clock, and kind of puts them on notice to get going.
Okay, so having said that, I mean, we've started.
Right, the project is
just
started, they're just not out there yet, and they can't do anything, they can't break ground until that ADM permit's approved.
Okay.
Is that their dilemma or ours?
That's theirs.
Do you know if the permit's gone to Eric or does he not review it until it goes to, it gets an ADM permit?
I'm not sure if it's gone to Eric. I do know that the process for the construction best management practices plan has been developed, and that's headed to ADM. It's not already in their hands.
Okay.
So we're just waiting on ADM's approval. But we can chase down whether or not Eric's got his part of it yet.
Are we fair in giving their 10-day notice to proceed without that back, or were they delayed in submitting their ADM?
No, they actually were ahead of the ballgame, you know, getting it done, hoping that the contract would get signed. It just so happens that, well, when we had pre-con that day, we issued notice to proceed, and then 10 days after that, we started time. So we set up 30 days in the contract for procurement of that permit.
Okay.
So it's only enough. If it hits 30 days and they come back and they still ain't got their permit, then we can make the decision if we need to stop time because ADM not moving fast enough. Then we just need them to get moving.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. All right, any discussion on that? I mean, that's kind of is what it is. Pam, you want to talk about our collection efforts?
Okay, we're skipping 3 right now for the,
Yeah,
okay.
till the guy calls in, I'm going to wait. We're going to have a discussion of ADS-B coverage if Matt calls in. I've given him contact information. Give your cell phone. he just call on your phone? I gave him both numbers.
Not that I know there. It hasn't buzzed or anything.
Okay, well, if he doesn't call, he doesn't call.
Okay, as we discussed at last month's meeting, went forward and collected past due rents from 2 individuals for a total of $16,000, and that money has been deposited in the bank. Also, we have a draft of a agricultural lease to go forward, which should have been included. And so that's the only thing outstanding are those funds that individuals paid to the city of Fairhope during that time period. And Joe has had some discussions with the city about that.
Well, I mean, there's about $22,000 the city has collected over the last 15 years that's on land that we actually owned for agricultural leases. I could go either way. The it wasn't, this is not the money Pam collected individually. This is money that cities are in the city coffers. I could go either way, whether we ask the city for the money back. There's an accounting of that money. But, I mean, my recommendation is we ask the city for the money back, but I'll defer to the board.
Mr. Chairman, you and I have discussed this, and I think the airport authority certainly has a right to ask for the money, although I do have mixed emotions, it being that the city's been giving the airport authority roughly $300,000 a year. It kind of seems chintzy to ask the city for, $20,000 when they've given literally millions. I could go either way on it too. If you ask them, I could stay out of it, but representing the city as well, it's like, are we not doing enough for you?
Well, we could also look at it in terms of a possible, say for the next year, we're not charged a portion of the city audit.
That's a good idea.
I'm not sure that's going to be, that's a moving picture right now.
Well,
I could go either way. I will truly, if we want to vote on it, ask for it. I mean,
I think the most important thing is that we have cleared it up.
yeah, we have cleared it
And we're
up.
going forward.
Yep.
And we have collected some monies, and those are deposited.
And we have farmers that are going to sign leases going forward, and we're excited about that. So,
So
what's the board's pleasure?
I say make a note of it, and make sure the city's aware that we are foregoing the 22,000 and move on.
Yeah, you might just want to play that card later.
Okay, we can do it. Certainly, we'll make. So, and that's kind of, I mean, I guess that's how I feel.
There's going to be some opportunities.
Yeah,
where
we're gonna have some
You can throw
opportunities,
that
yeah.
back at the city and say, well, we didn't get that
By the way.
money. When we need the, airport, the runway swept again, or because we've got an air show coming and it's not time to do it, or something, Then you
Sure.
can
As I
use
said,
that for
in
some,
kind.
use it for some leverage, for some in kind is what I would think.
Okay, so we will make a decision not to ask for that money back, and we'll move forward with individual leases. One of our farmers, Mr. McKenzie's here. You want to speak for a second,
Yes, sir.
Tommy?
How, the lease that y'all wanting, how many years are y'all wanting to?
it's
do?
a proposed 2-year lease.
Okay. The only disadvantage of the 2 years is the fertilizer situation. When you put some fertilizer out, some fertilizers take 2 to 3 to 4 years to work. If there's any way we make it go 5.
I've been a farmer, and I agree with you,
You know,
particularly
two
on
years
lining
is-
land.
2 years is really,
Yeah.
not really feasible.
If you
I
went,
agree.
if you went 5 years, what would be your position with respect to a periodic increase in the rent over that period of time?
Well, I've been farming all my life. I'm 52 years old, and the last 20 years, the rent has not gone up over $5 to $10 an acre, in the last 10 years.
You're speaking market rent generally.
Yes, sir, yeah. Now, you're gonna have some idiots go out there and pay high dollar rent to, to mooch up some property. But, to my knowledge, I think we've been paying 40, 45, Mr. Frigo was paying 50, and I think we're decided to whatever, make them all the same. And, the next question, we've been paying the city every year since the city bought the property. My mother's in charge of the books, and she's been paying every October. She has been panicking about the check right now. Do we need to go ahead and send it into the city, or wait and get the new lease, or?
I think we ought to just, I think all this is gonna happen this month. It's like I told you the other day on the phone, I'd like to just collect that money, when we sign the lease.
That's fine.
Pam, does that work?
That works,
And
yeah.
I would like to get Mr. Frago's, he paid $1,200 in September, he kind of started this, get that maybe refunded to us. I mean, that would be the $1,200 that we started this process, where he paid early, and get it when we signed his lease too. That's okay, Jack.
I wouldn't stand in your way of doing that. My question is just more general in nature, and that we're not gonna need any of these parcels within the next 5 years for any
No.
improvements. We don't have a next phase of FAA grants that's gonna make any improvements upon this land that would prevent us from leasing.
These are all parcels of land that are in the landing in
So
lane.
north of 32 and the area south
South,
of
yeah.
Bishop.
Right,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah. No, this is a good use, agricultural use is a good use for
Yeah.
this.
I just make sure
parcels of
that-
My
land.
understanding is why it was bought is where nothing could be developed on.
That's right.
Well, when I saw the 32 acre parcels, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't somewhere along the east side.
That's on Bishop, that's on
No.
Bishop.
You are just north and south. So, and, well, the draft lease, we can amend that to 5 years.
5 years.
But the amount that we had put in there was $50 an acre. I had discussions with the Auburn, University of Auburn Agricultural Extension, and they said in this area, generally it would go between $40 and $60 an acre.
40 and 60.
40 to 60. It depended on crops and so forth. We didn't want to get into differentiating between crops, and we felt that $50 was a fair amount.
$50 sound reasonable?
Yes, sir.
I do agree with you. I've been a farmer in Wilcox County for years, and particularly on liming, that takes 2 or 3 or 4
Yes,
years to
40
take
years
effect. So, yeah, thank you for suggesting that.
All right, is that included in our, yes.
The lease, yes.
In your packet, and, Josh also sent this out, was the draft lease agreement. And it would be, item number 4 would be changed to 5 years at $50 an acre. And,
And in paragraph 5, I can make a note that January 1 would be changed to October 1, 2018.
Yes.
And so forth throughout the term of the lease. Anything that says January should have been changed to October.
And then on 4, we're gonna change the lease term from 2 years, and then we're gonna take the 2 years at a mutually agreeable rate and change that to 5 also. Change both of those to 5.
yeah.
And we'll send you an invoice once a year so that you'll have that, we'll both have it for our
That's
record.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Which is a lot harder.
Will we pay yearly, or will we pay for the whole 5 years at one time?
Yearly.
Yearly.
Okay.
Yeah. Invoices are a lot more difficult for us than you think it is. But we will do that. Jack, are you okay with all this?
Sounds good.
And just, I should look at 16, assignment or subletting, any transfer, assignment of this lease or any interest therein, any subletting of the lease premises or any part thereof or interest therein shall be void unless the landlord consents in writing. Any violation of this paragraph is a substantial and material breach of the lease with all the rights thereunto pertaining as in the case of default for any other cause under the lease. So, therefore, they can't sublet the land without our agreement. So if no one has any other comments or edits, suggestions for the lease, this is what we propose to go forward with.
Need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Maybe I
Yes, Bill.
I don't hear as well as I once did. There's a provision in here for additional 2 years. Is that going to be changed to an additional 5 years?
What paragraph is that,
That's a
please?
good
Four.
catch.
Yeah, paragraph 4.
That's one I
Yeah,
got.
yeah, we covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I just didn't hear.
That's all right.
So our renewal term will be 5 years.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, I make a motion to approve this template lease agreement for the agricultural land owned by the airport authority with the modifications that we have specified during our discussion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Can I say something about number 5?
Sure.
Sure.
Just clear the air. We didn't give these guys bills either.
No,
Neither
they-
did the city. It's
no,
not that they were
that's
past due.
right.
Nobody said, hey, here's your bill, pay your rent. And then when we did, they paid
They
immediately.
wrote a check. They wrote a check.
Because their names are out here in public and
That's good.
they were not past
I'm
due.
glad you mentioned that. That's good.
Yeah.
Lloyd, I have to buy me something to drink for that.
Floyd, first comment was, how can I make this right?
I'd
Both
I'd
those
like
guys.
to say that all of the farmers have been extremely cooperative, and it's, the process has gone quite smoothly. So thank you.
Pam, you gonna do 7?
Just a second, you're just catching up. Okay, have you all looked over the latest notice of availability?
I have.
There were, I know Joe and I had some comments, and so let me start off, and then anybody else who has any comments for this, please chime in. Okay, on item number 4, we don't have any mention that we had before of no subdivisions of the lease. And we did have that in there.
Can I say something before you get too far down there?
Sure.
If we approve that new plan that Hank brought today, we'll have 5 instead of 4.
I think the first one's probably intended to be an FBO hangar. That's the way I viewed it.
You got a copy of those?
Yeah. And the first one adjacent to the ramp, I'm assuming that's,
Well, perhaps we ought to discuss all of that and go
Yeah.
back to this notice of availability so that all that's ironed out.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we do it like that?
I can read it on my screen.
Yeah.
When I viewed it, Hank said the update, that's what I just
Thank
kind
you.
of thought it was.
Let's
Let's talk
skip
about
over
that
that
one.
so
Chip.
it's all ironed out
about that
before we go back to
Yeah.
the
We're
notice
talking
of
about these 4,
availability.
that'd be 5, that goes with the FPO there.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
there you go, okay.
Last time we talked about this, you were on the phone on pain medication.
That's true. It's one of our more enjoyable airport board meetings.
Pain-free.
No, there are 5.
That's the, but
With this drawing, there's 5.
Yeah, there are 5.
that's because we moved the terminal building.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that actually gave us an extra spot.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And which Hank pointed out should be, that P10 should be very valuable because you could
It's
have
corner
doors on
lot.
both sides
Yeah.
And you
for
have the
your
best
corporate
view.
hangar. Yeah, and you got a great view.
That's significant.
I just brought that up because if we
No,
go
that's-
with
that's-
this, you're gonna have 4 or you're gonna have 5 everywhere you mentioned 4 in there.
I think, okay, that's a great catch. And I mean, we should, when we send out our notice of availability, if we send out electronically, I mean, I've got, 12 or 13 people who've expressed interest, I'll attach this with it too. So, that's good.
I guess the only point I'd like to make is the two lots, P10 and P11, is pay attention that there is, it's not just a straight lot. It's gonna be kind of like a right-of-way easement off of that roadway. And what I've got it set at right now is 20 feet from center line. So roughly a 40-foot right-of-way for the road. And we can increase that or decrease that, but
Sure.
I don't know that you want to decrease it just because of the, you don't want to build in right up next to the road with anything, whether it be a sign or anything like that,
Okay.
Okay, so that, when we have that the hangar pads are approximately 261 feet by 150 feet, or 0.89 acres, since they vary somewhat, should we just leave that out and just say a legal description and survey is available?
Yeah, I think that's essentially what you have to do, Ms. Pam. I mean, we can
Yeah.
get you some rough acreages based on this plan.
But I think if we just tell them that the legal description and survey is available.
Not available yet, but we are gonna contract for that. I mean,
When can we jump in?
Go ahead.
Are y'all ready? Okay, I didn't know if you were gonna go through them all and then we need to just jump in and make comments.
Go right ahead and make comments and,
Okay, I have many.
okay, go ahead.
The first one of which talks about a minimum of 25 cents per foot. That was the same minimum that we used a few years ago, right?
I thought raise was 24. I thought we did
I
raise.
thought it was 25 because the bids were 25, 25, and 25 and a half.
Well, that's
That's
a
correct.
great, that's a great catch.
And I think that we probably ought to bump it up a little bit, just a little bit, maybe a few percent.
Yeah, add that note too.
And then, so that's one thought. And then the next thought along those lines was that, do you want to base this solely on price per square foot? Or do you want to base this on estimated fuel usage plus price per square foot plus the value of the structure that you will put on there? For instance, if somebody gets one of these spaces and puts a $250,000 hanger on it versus somebody that gets one of these spaces and puts a $2 million hanger on there, I think that has value, and that's the way the last lease was evaluated. And if we don't put something like that in there, we're gonna have some big problems. So that's another thought. And then lastly, which I know that there may be a lot of debate being held over this, is I'm extremely concerned about allowing more private fuel farms. I've said it before, I said it months and months ago, I think it waters down the value of an FBO
It does.
significantly, and I think that it also, if we were to operate it ourselves, we would be taking away a massive amount of revenue from the airport authority.
But since we've already allowed it,
I don't think when we allowed it, we said we're gonna always allow it. I don't know that we're under any obligation. I might ask the attorney, I don't think
There
we're
was
under
an
any obligation
FAA.
to ever allow it, are we?
What the FAA has
FAA,
told us, that
yeah.
we have to make reasonable accommodations for self-service, which includes the right to fuel. So,
Wow.
That's
You know,
why
It's like 2
on this
years
one right
ago.
here, Jack, this is, if you take these 4 tanks right here.
Yeah.
One would be an FBO Jet A, one would be an FBO avgas. You would have to go into the assumption that a corporate hangar only wants Jet A, not avgas. So you would have 2 corporate hangars. Then we have met the standard of the FAA of, we've offered it first come, first served. You want to be this hangar or this hangar, and you get to have your Jet A service. We've created a spot for it, and then we're not obligated by the FAA to create what someone would like to have 10 years from now when they lease this one. And we've minimized this to a reasonable thing, and now we would have 3 fuel farms, an FBO, a corporate, just like we have on the west side.
Let me ask you this then, this is also for you, Josh. It's no secret that if you're selling gas, you can make a lot of money. I mean, down at the harbor, we're selling it The boat's cheaper than anybody around, but because we own it, we're making money. It'd be no different with the airport authority. Is it legal to charge a private fuel farm a fuel surcharge at a different rate than what you would charge the FBO?
That's a good question. I don't know. What's our fuel flowage fee is 7 cents a gallon, right? And that's charged based on what they fill up.
When they buy it.
When they buy it. When they buy it, they pay 7
Can we,
cents a gallon.
like, so as we're working on this draft, can we put I'm just gonna make up a number, and we say it's a 25-cent fuel surcharge? And I don't know if that private consumer's paying a retail or wholesale price when they buy that truckload of fuel. I'm assuming they're probably getting it closer to wholesale. I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
Closer to wholesale.
Closer to wholesale. So if they are, then I say that's taking profits away from the airport authority. We ought to slap a higher fuel surcharge on them. And then when it comes to the FBO, if we're going to have an FBO there, we have to make it valuable to them too, and it could be a lower fuel charge for them.
Sure. I can tell you only that the advisory circular says that you do have to allow for self-service, but it doesn't go into such detail to cover what you're describing. So we'll have to do some research and figure that
Well,
out.
I think, and I don't know if y'all are ready to vote on this or not tonight, but if not, I think we got to work on that language and get all that in there.
Well, paragraph 7, we met with the city of, with the Gulf Shores folks, and we tried to make it difficult, if you will, to build a self-service fuel farm. Environmental considerations, a countermeasure plan, posting a bond for the useful life of the facility. I think Jack's thing about an extra surcharge for a private is something may have some legs that would make it, less attractive.
That's where we have it located. If someone wants it, they're gonna have to have
Have
a
a
fuel
fuel
truck.
truck.
They're gonna, in addition to having a fuel farm, they're gonna have their own fuel truck.
Which makes them equal with the FBO.
Makes it equal to the FBO.
I don't know if that's legal. I don't know. if
You have
they
to make
say-
sure that's allowed too.
But-
Y'all got
We-
me all
we
concerned
probably
with the
need to
legalities
send-
of it, but.
Yeah.
We probably need to finish this up and send this over to Kevin at the FAA to review. I mean, we're in kind of areas I've never been in before.
I don't think we purposely tried to make it difficult. I think we tried to make it to a competitive nature of what an FBO would have to do to be an FBO. And that is more difficult by nature, but they need to be up to the FBO standard at a minimum, since the FBO is gonna be competing with that person.
Well, these environmental things are the same things that everybody has to do. I mean, but we want to spell them out so that we want someone to realize going in that this is going to be a cost that they have. The bond is probably new, but I think that's that's something that's out there that people are doing all the time.
I think on that, so I would, I just ran some numbers on my calculator here. I would put the minimum, ground lease at about 27 cents a foot. And then I would suggest that, when you say the cost of the hangar, it doesn't need to be a moving target. It needs to say what your minimum value of that's going to be, minimum, or, in other words, if you say it's going to be valued at 400,000, it needs to be verifiable 400,000, not 300,000. And then also, if we're going to put in there, what's the value of your fuel fees? That's a tougher one to get in writing, but we need to find a way to get it in there, because you're looking at the total value. We based the award of the last hangar on the total value to the authority.
I think the building cost or value is the most important one, because that's the real number. The 7 cents a gallon will take you a long time, whether it's 50,000 versus.
So even if you were
100,000
at 100,000 at 7 cents a gallon, was that 7,000 a year?
Mhm.
And I think one thing that we can also look at, and I think of those 4 pads, the minimum standards for design are going to carry with them a minimum price tag. I mean, so I think that, and I think that's kind of protecting the long-term interest of the airport authority when they do revert back at some point in time as to what's left there. You know, it's beyond just what is the present day value from a dollar, but it's, you know, what is the residual value and utility of that. And I think to that end that these fuel farms, in addition to this, I think they need to be a standard spec and manufacturer. If they're gonna be going back to the airport authority one day, you don't want four different vendors.
So we
trying
need
to
some kind of
service.
architectural review type.
And it needs to be from one
That is
maker.
in here,
Okay, great.
that it is subject to the construction and architectural
Okay.
review committees.
Okay.
But the fuel tank needs to be, they need to be standardized, and they need to be from the same person so they can come and service them, and all of them work the same, and they're not, you know, 20 years from now, this guy no longer around, and, you know, so I think there are some, we know, there are companies that do better jobs than others, and I think that'll give us, and it's not to make it more difficult, it is truly to have more uniformity and more serviceability in the long term of all these fixed assets.
But at the same time, you know, even if you meet the minimum standards and those standards are high and you're gonna build a $750,000 hangar, which would be fantastic, there may be somebody that is planning on building a $2 or $3 million hangar.
But.
And that's huge value in the long term.
When we have 5 slots this time, I have 17 names on a piece of paper. It would really be a great thing if all 5, I mean, I don't have any in, you know, I would hope that 3 of them would, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think it's gonna be as competitive as it's been before. I could be wrong.
Well, then we just hold back. I mean,
Yeah,
isn't it? Says we gotta give them away.
yeah.
Along with what Ray was saying, you know, we need to develop all of our environmental issues with this fuel farm location, which is gonna take the curbs and the catch pin that Hank went through in detail of how you gotta close it off. All right, so when that comes, and FBO needs to share, if they're taking
Maybe you do 3,
2 of those slots,
3
they
and
need to
then 2.
share half of that cost. And then this hangar needs to take a fourth, and this one take a fourth.
That's a great idea.
We
That
get
way you
reimbursed
get it
that.
Yeah, we're going to
And you
craft
see
some
that,
language,
yeah,
like Ray
that's
said,
what
is
you should do.
different than what we have
It's a
in the
really good
existing
idea,
leases,
Jack.
because the clustered fuel farm is going to make it a situation where Ray said, we don't want them pointing fingers at each other. We have to have a clear, if something happens, this is who you're
If
responsible
it's a
for.
concrete structure with a curb around it, you're gonna know who's leaking real fast. If it's grass, you're not gonna know.
Yeah.
Jack had a great point.
Yeah, I think that maybe instead of letting 5, maybe you only let 3.
I was
We'll get a
wondering
gauge.
about that,
If we get 12 people going after those 3, then we can immediately come out and with same type terms for the following 2. If we're worried about flooding the market, then let's not flood the market.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I think when we're talking about that, like advertising 3 instead of 5, is that within like the sort of private commercial activity the FAA does not necessarily concern itself with?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
We would need to just check, but it sounds to me like it's reasonable.
Okay.
Well, when you do that, you're also gonna get rid of all the fuel farm spots. I mean, so you're gonna flush out like the guys that are gonna do it, and then it's no longer a consideration
No
on
problem.
diluting the fuel farm and flowage for the rest of them. So, I mean, cause you only have 4 spots, the FBO is gonna take 2. So that's, you know,
2 more.
yeah, you'll have 3, and there are only gonna be two fuel farms for
Yeah,
them.
but if we put that premium on there for those ones that lease it, if we put a premium on there, they might thank us later.
I think so, but I mean, I would say that I think there's gonna be more research, and I have a circular that I need to get to Josh on kind of all the legal issues with this, and I do think that there could be a pretty sound equal protection argument against like favoring the FBO's fuel flow over the other, when it's essentially the same fuel flow. I could imagine that someone would potentially see an opportunity there. Josh, you may disagree, but I would think that unless it's real carefully crafted, if it's not real neat, that it could be an issue if you're just arbitrarily putting something on to protect one class of business from another, because the FAA characterizes all of them kind of as businesses, on-field businesses. And you're saying like one business.
Well, you're not, because they're buying the fuel at wholesale, and they're buying it less than they can buy it from the FBO. So you think you can make a strong argument that, no, you're not. You're just making up, lost revenue. Let's say
But
that
it's
we were
not
the
lost.
FBO.
There is a fee that's paid on top of it that's the par value to the airport authority. The airport authority gets money on
No,
top of it.
not if the airport authority ran the FBO and marked up the fuel themselves.
So not competing with the airport authority.
Yeah, they would be getting it themselves at wholesale. Let's say the FBO's markup was 50 cents a gallon when they sold it to everybody.
Okay.
You see, so that's lost revenue. If you give them a private fuel farm, they're buying it at wholesale. You're not getting the 50 cents of revenue. There's an argument to be made that you can charge them a higher amount because they're buying it at a steep discount.
I didn't appreciate that the authority was considering running the FBO.
I'm just saying, if we did, that's an
That's-
argument that could be made.
I think that's what Jack is throwing out for consideration, not.
I think it should also be considered. But even the FBO, we're watering down that lease. We're taking money away from the authority by watering down the FBO lease if they don't get the fuel sales that they would get had there not been private fuel farms. And that comes back to the authority in value of the lease.
That part I agree with you. The city-run FBO, I'm not on board with.
No, I'm just saying if so. I just throwing every option on the
I
table.
understand.
There's arguments to be made either way on that.
So, you had some more substantive comments, didn't you, Jack?
I believe that was my main.
But Hannah, you had some more.
I did, but I think,
Yeah, but
Ray's got some
No,
too.
none of those were substantive.
You sent out some.
Yeah, and Josh touched on one, and it was just related to kind of the apportionment of fault. If there's a spill on the shared fuel farm pad, I mean, in the current language that we have, there's we did a phase one, phase 2, before the pad was put in, and you came back with a clean bill of health. And in the event there was some sort of act in the time of the lease, then the tenant that was on the ground lease that was operating the fuel farm would be responsible for the cleanup. So in this scenario here, there's gonna be the same sort of upfront thing, but they're gonna be potentially 4 parties that would be, and I said this in an email, I'm just saying it out loud, I know you all can read, but would be able to point fingers at one another 30 years from now as to where the fuel came from that ended up causing the contaminated condition. So I just thought that there needs to be an agreement between the parties that use the fuel farm that in the event fault cannot be clearly established, all parties will be sharing equally in the cleanup.
Do we even need to do a phase 2 if we get that language in there?
Yeah, I think yeah, because you need to make sure that it wasn't contaminated when they took it on.
Can you get that?
Phase 2
super
costs
fund insurance
$10,000.
done that way, though? With 3 people involved? I mean, that might be difficult.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Well, those are all good points. Just,
You had another few points about, do we need to establish a minimum sized hangar that will be allowed on the different hangar spaces?
Yeah, so these sites were obviously, the ones that we're describing here, the 261 by 150. And Jack's kind of addressed that by the scarcity in the bid, that it probably is gonna influence the valuation. And I don't know what that standard is in here that we're gonna do, but I was thinking as those pieces of dirt are so valuable, we need to make sure that the buildings that go on there are kind of highest and best use for those pads. You wouldn't wanna see an 8,000 square foot hangar where there's potentially,
Or 10,000.
where it should be a 10,000 square foot hangar on there. And then the other idea is something, that is there anything, I didn't even print a copy of what I
Oh,
sent.
here.
Was there anything else?
Yeah, there is. When you're talking about the size of the hangar and adequate spacing.
Okay, and I think that's actually okay. I was looking at this.
but I think that, because there is reference in there about complying with Fairhope's building standards.
Well,
And-
yeah, but
And I was just saying that, the minimum size of these hangars as you use the setback off so they're 15 foot, so there's a 30-foot spacing between these buildings. So, I was looking at a
It's
dimension
50.
drawing, right?
Is it 50? It's
50
50.
feet between the buildings.
So there should be a 25
25
foot.
each side.
So that needs to be changed at a minimum. I was thinking about that as I was typing it, but I thought it was 25 feet.
Yeah, so.
You know, what we talked about is you can go down to almost nothing.
If you have that 2-hour
But if you're
firewall.
not 30 feet,
Right.
you have to have the 2-hour firewall.
Right.
And this is drawn with 25 each side, so it would be prudent for someone to shrink it a little bit, or they have to have that firewall.
So that's 25 off each, and then we're talking about a 150 feet, so it's 100-foot wide building's the biggest building that you can put on these lots. And I don't know that anyone's gonna wanna do anything better, but you cannot put anything bigger than a Gulfstream 4 in that hangar then, because you can't, the wingspan's too big. So I don't know if anybody's gonna wanna do that.
I'm out then, I can't get a plane.
Well, we also said that these lines are not cut and dried, that
Okay.
we can move those lines, and then we would just shift it down until this one became a 0 lot line.
Well, that's-
If that's what somebody wants.
And I would think that, and when we put these first 3 out, where I'm painting towards, is that they are going to establish how the lot lines can move, or how many we have after these first 3 are done. I don't know that anybody's gonna wanna put anything bigger than a G4
If
out
you want a
there.
140 by 140 building, we can move that line and accommodate you, and we would just keep shifting down till we get down here and take what's left and make something out of it.
But it was just another thought.
Or we could sell one on the end, one in the middle, and kind of take it out of each of them,
Yeah, and then we're gonna have 2 little bitty pieces.
2
in the
little
middle.
pieces.
Or you
But
lose
also,
the
we've
pad
got
altogether.
10,000 square feet here, and that really needs to be 9,600, because we're forcing you to put a sprinkler in your building. And now
Well,
we're
that's-
chasing tenants away.
And that is, yeah, you're right about that as well, so. And then the other thing that there was something that.
So do you think it should be less than 10,000?
It needs to be about 9,600, or,
Yeah.
it needs to be over 9,000.
Yeah.
And if you wanna put one over 10,000, spend $300,000 on a hangar, we're all for you. I mean, on a sprinkler system, we're all for you. But you should be able to build a hangar out here without having to put a firewall in it, without having to put a sprinkler system in a private hangar, unless you choose to, or we're gonna run tenants away. Because you can do that a lot of other places other than here.
That's a good point.
They're all good points, guys.
And then the only other issue that I thought about was, as we're doing a ground lease, and this is just something when we do public work, and you're doing any sort of development work, and I know there've been different ways to get to this end. Was, normally we post a bond, like, as I'm just saying, like one would post a bond when doing an improvement on a piece of public property, where if in the event it didn't finish, or there were some sort of liens or issues that came up, the authority, which isn't in a position to really otherwise finish the job, would have something to draw upon to finish it without having to say, let me see your bank account and see if you actually have the money, where you're having to do kind of a subjective review of financials. It's just like you're just gonna have to bond these improvements until they're completed, and then it's good enough for us.
I think that's great. We can take away the financial review, because all we want to do is move the construction risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's-
Well, and there is language in the current minimum standards about performance bond.
Mhm.
So we could take that language out of the minimum standards and put it in here as well, but it,
It just needs to be something
Yeah.
that the
So-
applicants put
I don't-
into their.
We don't want to get into the decision as to who can financially that we're involved in.
Right.
Right on here.
so Josh, we need to review the performance bond language in the minimum standards and see
Mhm. Yeah, I
if
just-
it's strong enough as it is.
I
or we need
included
to-
in paragraph 22, just after Ray sent the email, just a blurb about a performance bond for 100% of the project cost, bonding company, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
it wouldn't give me any heartburn to take out the previous part of that, which
Yeah,
talks
that's what I'm
about,
saying.
bank statements or
No, I
financial
take
review of
that out.
resources.
Take that out.
And we could just remove that completely.
You can get a
Yeah.
bond with cover.
Right, right.
If you can't get a bond, don't build a hangar.
Yeah. If you can't get a bond, that shifts the responsibility.
And we don't get into your personal information.
Mhm.
Okay, so Vince, talking about the,
You don't require a bid bond, make sure they negotiate.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Yes.
Well, he's asking about a bid
Bid
bond
bond.
for the GC that would be building, and I think that would probably
Maybe
be,
not a bid bond, but a performance.
performance bond would be between the tenant and the authority, and whatever the tenant and the GC does is kind of on their watch.
Since they're gonna be hiring their contractor, leave them up to whether they want a bid bond or not, but they have to give us a
Airport
performance
authority's
bond.
considered the owner, right?
eventually.
Yeah, but do we trust everybody that's gonna negotiate the bid bonds to make sure they're gonna sign lease contract?
I think you just-
I know the general and the owner's gonna, or the builder.
I think what he's referring to is similar to a bid bond, which you're not real familiar with, Vince. And then if you go out for a request for prices on these leases, are you gonna require them to give a guarantee that if they're the highest price, that they'll be willing to come forward and negotiate and not just walk out on you so that the next guy can't?
You're talking about the potential leasing.
Right.
Good question.
I think it would be hard for some of these entities that'll be bidding on this to secure a bid bond just because their business structures aren't gonna be such that it's gonna be.
They're not gonna have a drawing. At that point.
And so, I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I just think practically that it could be difficult for a company that's a pharmaceutical reseller to be able to come up with a bid bond capability where they could work with their GC and their bonding company to come up with a performance bond for us. But I may be wrong, I may be missing something, and I don't know what I don't know, but.
And what you're talking about, Bill, is we tell,
Well, bid bonds, the cost of the bid
right,
bond.
but we tell Hank no because he didn't have the best proposal. And then the other guy disappears and now Hank's mad, he's already gone somewhere else, so we lost two then. Is that what?
Yeah,
That's
just kind of.
essentially what it is. It's,
But then it'd be hard to get that, because somebody might bid on this piece of property right here without a set of plans or a concept other than 9,000 square feet, you know, so.
I think the situation that you would find yourself in a case like this was, let's just say that a Foley or a Bay Minette came up with a similar situation where they were offering hangar leases, and then a potential tenant goes there and says, okay, well, Fairhope's got hangar leases coming out, Bay Minette's got hangar leases coming out, well, I'm just gonna submit a price on both of them, and then whichever one I like, I'll walk away from. Well, then you're left holding the money, or left holding the bag, and you missed out on a potential tenant that could have had it.
Yep.
And then the way to keep them from doing that is to say, okay, if you're gonna give me a guarantee of a certain percentage, if you turn that in, that you're gonna be willing to negotiate. If you don't negotiate to have this contract for this lease, then you forfeit that money. It's kinda like earnest money.
Yeah.
So then
Similar to buying a house, it's like earnest money before you get approval or whatever.
do a standard 1% bid bond up to $10,000 non-refundable.
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing, but it's just on the highest price, and making sure that he don't go over there and
Tie it
bid
up
on
for
2
18
different hangar
months.
leases in 3 different locations.
Because I guess you could, by the way this is written, you could tie it up for 18 months. And even though you would be defaulting and everyone would know it would be coming, you wouldn't be in default until the 18th
You're
month.
not finished, so.
And you'd have your $10,000 non-refundable bid
Mhm.
bond.
I don't-
That could be done.
There's a way
That's
to
pretty
do
easy
that.
language. We can find that about any set of specifications laying
We
in the
asked
office.
for-
Or you can also tighten up these timelines on like doing some certain, maybe some other things other than just completion of construction being the only trigger event.
Submittal plans, et cetera.
But the more triggers you have, the more enforcing you're.
Well, you're gonna have to be doing it anyway, because you're gonna, the architectural review, the building, stuff like that's gonna have to happen, and it's almost like there's a critical timeline to get one of these things done in 18 months. And, I think that there are people that could help establish what that timeline is and maybe make a reasonable pathway to just say, like, if you're not tracking on this, it'd be a good guidepost for people doing it that may not have timeline experience like that, but it also would be good for us to know, are they tracking on time, or are they not? And not have
3
speculation.
months drawing, 6 months building
Yeah.
permit, 12 months building.
Yeah.
Get you a year and a half.
Yeah, I would say a timeline would be good. Did you have anything else, Ray?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, so going back to item 4, I thought there was original language that we were not going to permit subdividing of the hangars. And yet when I read this, I did not see that language in there. Am I correct in that recall?
Yeah, that should be probably up in the general part, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as subdividing, you talk about building two
Two
separate
4,000
hangars
square
on
foot
one
hangars,
lot.
Yeah.
Someone might want to build, because I've seen this before, build a large hangar, but put a and two individuals build it, but put a non-load bearing wall down the middle so they have their own separate hangar, but it's all one structure.
All one lease and not multiple buildings
Yeah.
per
But
lot.
two people can build it, share it, and have their own separate hangar instead of.
Well, they'd both be on one lease, though. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, that's not subdividing, but I think,
But we don't want you to be able to subdivide and have a 50-foot hangar and a 50-foot hangar and a 50-foot hangar. And y'all
Yeah.
all put your firewalls in, we got three different
Right.
buildings.
Right.
I agree with that.
okay, and then on number 5, the way it's worded now is the prospective tenant has 18 months from the authority's approval to negotiate a ground lease and to complete construction. Negotiate a ground lease, how about from the date of a signed ground lease?
That's
And on item number 6, first of all, the first sentence, the word "and" is not needed. But there was, I think this was another suggestion that Ray had earlier made about the need to add language clarifying the utilities are generally available to the east side ramp, but the prospective tenant will be required to distribute all utilities to their site and building location, subject to the approval of the airport authority. So I think that that should probably be included in there as well.
We're going to stub out the utilities enough to bring their own utilities to the building.
Yeah, so
Okay.
got to have that in there. And so are we, now, item number 7, I think originally we had a larger square footage, and is this what we agreed to, was the 8,000 square feet?
What size is your hangar?
Mine's 99,
99.
99.
What size is that one? 99.99.
Would we want to change this 10,000 to 9,000 something?
Yes, that's what we had talked about, to
Yeah.
allow them
And,
to not require sprinkler
It
systems.
was 8,000, I just changed it to 10,000. 9,999 or not, yeah.
9,600, is that what we talked?
9,800?
Well, anyway,
It needs to be at least 9,000 is what I would say. And then that way, they can go between 9 and 10 and not punish themselves.
okay.
You could build 100 by 90, yeah.
And, let's see.
95 squared to 9,025, so you can get in there and make it work.
Oh, and item number 20 says, this notice is open to all persons, firms, or entities which may include employees or representatives of the City of Fairhope or the authority. If an employee or representative of the City of Fairhope or one or more of the city's boards or committees applies to this notice, then the submittal of such application shall be disclosed to all other prospective tenants. Should we also include in that second sentence, if an employee, representative of the City of Fairhope or one or more of the city's boards or the authority? Does the authority have to be in that second sentence?
Probably should be.
Yeah, I think it
for
should.
practical
Yeah,
purposes,
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
What about advisory committee members? If you're gonna put airport authority, put the advisory committee members in there also.
As they should be included in there, yeah. They should. Let's see.
So add the advisory to the first sentence and add airport authority and advisory to the second sentence.
I think we talked about where you're going to do the 22.
Well, it says or one or more of the city's boards or committees, so
That pretty
it
much
really
covers
covers all of it.
Yeah, except that we're not a city board or committee, we're, separate, so
The
they're.
only other one is a library authority.
So, and, so in the draft prior to this one, we had a paragraph that a sample form of the 30-year ground lease was available from the authority, but it's not in this one.
Is that not in there?
No,
Say that
I didn't
again?
see it.
What'd you just say?
Hold
Say
on.
that again.
Number 10?
Is it 10? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a form, okay. Sorry, I missed that. It was scrunched way up there at the top. And, okay, so I think that covers everything I have.
So what's our plan for getting this, moving this forward? You
Oh, I
want to table
did-
it to November?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Josh, you'll take care of getting a clean
I
draft
will.
of all these things?
I was trying to get a work meeting together
Okay.
with Pam and Chip and Bill Pennington and myself, and then we were working towards Thursday and Friday last week.
Okay.
And then I got on a AOPA phone conference that we're gonna name at the last second, that I had to attend for the fly-in. So we didn't do it, and we can do that before the next meeting, and then we can walk through it item by item and
Yeah.
see if we can just pick it to death until we're happy.
Yeah, so we'll have to then change the
And then, so-
publication
so
dates.
you'll be the scribe, and you'll get the final changes to Josh.
Well, he's been
I've
making
been
a
making,
whole
I've been
list.
making
But
notes.
he's not gonna come to the meeting with Vince unless he's asked.
I mean, I can, that's
More
fine,
than
but
Okay.
let me
I think it would-
circulate a revised version, and then that's
Okay.
what we'll take to the meeting
Yeah.
and not this
Right.
version.
I
But don't
think it
you-
would be good.
Go ahead.
I think it would be good if Josh attended the
That'd be
meeting.
great, yeah.
I mean, you need to get some answers from maybe the FAA on some of the questions about fuel surcharges as well, right?
Yes.
Fees.
Yeah.
I think if we.
Well, Ray said, you said you had an advisory circular that touched on some of these issues. I want to do my own research first, just so we're not going to the FAA and saying, hey, what's your take on this? I mean, I'd like to kind of get our position nailed down so we can tell them this is what we'd like to do.
Well, I would use the argument that if you water down the value of the FBO, you're watering the amount of lease money that we can recover from the FBO.
Mhm.
If they can't sell,
Fuel.
you know, the
Right.
proper amount of fuel, that's the argument, and so, you can handle it from there.
One other thing, do we need to add a contingency limiting the airport authority's liability to, on initial performance to final funding? I mean, we don't have the money in the bank, we can't perform.
Where are you reading?
Or you-
No, I'm just wondering if we need to add that
Oh,
somewhere.
add a total sentence.
Yeah, just a limiting contingency on liability. We can't perform if we don't have the money. If we get a hitch somewhere along the line. It's just a liability
Does the
thing.
performance bond not take care of
Well, it might.
I mean,
No, you're talking about us finishing the work on the
Right,
ramp.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
We've got the money in the bank. Just for
We
the
don't
east.
have it yet.
For the east side?
Yeah. I mean, we might,
that?
Yeah,
Maybe
I see what you're saying.
We don't have enough money to build all that.
show proof of financial capability during the negotiation for the lease.
well, we're talking about just a contingency for airport authority performance as the lessor.
That's true, we don't, I mean, because there's a second phase to get it really running what it needs to be.
So you're saying we should add a line here that all of this is subject to final funding through the
Yeah.
FAA of our master plan?
Of the, yeah. the-
A phase, yeah. That's
I think that's wise.
okay.
Instead of somebody saying, I've spent $200,000 getting this design here, you don't have it ready for
You're
me.
not gonna perform.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Okay, so 7, we're gonna regroup again in November and knock it out,
Yeah.
and we'll change the dates, okay?
Well, so in that meeting, we'll discuss the other idea of maybe establishing different rates for where it's located, like, you know, the corner hangar and so forth, minimum size. We'll bring that back to the meeting.
Yeah, and we need to talk about that. You know, Mobile, Chip, you tell me if I'm wrong, Gulf Shores has a set rate and you can come lease it. And their answer is, tell us what you want, the lines can move wherever. And they don't, the rate doesn't go up or down. does it?
24 cents a square foot, but I think it does have, they're 24 cents a square foot and a 40-year lease. But I think they do have, after every 5 years, there's some type of
5-year escalator in there,
escalated.
which we don't have in here, which would be a good point for us. to
That's
talk
in the
about.
lease, though. In the lease, there's an escalation clause every 5 years.
Okay.
You know, it's a CPI, we have a
It
combination.
might be,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
We
it's-
might want to put it in there, so there's not a.
Any questions?
Yeah, no
so-
questions.
Go ahead, full disclosure there.
Yeah.
I have a copy of one that I just accepted. It's quite complicated if you want to use the formula in
Well,
it.
The CPI, I mean, we have one in the Continental one, and it takes a full day to figure out what the lease is.
does, that's correct.
'Cause y'all's actually goes up in December from, I mean, it's a tough calculation. CPI over, you know, over month for.
It's very complicated.
It is complicated.
But yes, we need that in there, but they just have a flat rate and then the increases. And you're saying you think it's 24 cents?
24
And
cents.
nobody's building right now. But they were also created for smaller hangars than this too, not really corporate hangars.
Well, I mean, you can build,
But you can't.
I mean, you look at, over on the east side, they've got hangars that are, they got
Yeah.
as big as Ray's and Allen's, maybe even there's a guy from Columbus, it might even be bigger, because I know at one time Kel had about 3 or 4 of his airplanes in there, he was renting it. It's
And
pretty
the one
big.
Gulf Air just built's bigger than that. and it's
Big
got
spot, yeah.
10 units.
But that's what they charge, 24 cents, and they only charge 6 cents a gallon fuel surcharge. Of course, they only have 3 fuel farms, they've got 3 FBOs, no one's allowed to have their own private fuel farm there.
I think Mobile charges 8 though.
Not sure.
All right, let's move on. Number
Can I,
8.
before we move on,
Okay.
can I ask one thing on this, not particularly on the lease, but on the master plan here? What do y'all think about swapping the maintenance hangar and the FBO terminal? We would have to redo the parking lot slightly, but that would not be any problem, I don't think. I'm thinking of a visitor driving into the airport, this is the main
Yeah.
entrance, turning into the parking lot. If we swapped the maintenance hangar for the FBO and the terminal building, the first thing a visitor seeing driving into the parking lot would be the welcoming, attractive terminal building and not the maintenance hangar.
That's the same thing Hank said to me today.
Really?
We can do either or. I've actually drawn both of them
Okay.
just to make sure they fit.
Here's the
That's
only
not-
thing I said to Hank when I was talking to him, and I was a committee of one at that time. I said, I love going to an airport that has the FBO sitting out there where you can sit outside and watch the airplanes.
Yeah, you got the
Instead of
observation deck
vice
right
versa
there,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, put that observation deck out there. But I agree with what you're saying, and I was thinking we'd come a long ways from the first thing you saw was a fuel farm. Now we got
right.
building.
Thank you for that.
Used to be a
But
fuel farm
I
right there.
agree with you, and
Something to be
like I
done.
told Hank, I said, somebody's gonna come in here and wanna build an FBO, let them bring a design to the airport and say, here's what I'd like, and let's say it's ugly or it's not. Cause again, I don't think those are cast in stone either.
No, none of those are cast in stone. This is just a representation of what you could do.
Yeah.
And you can move stuff around, and that can be done at any time.
I agree with what you're saying, the first thing you wanna see is the
Yeah.
FBO.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you go inside, you wanna sit there and watch planes land. take
Well,
off.
if we swap the two buildings and backset to the north, the maintenance hangar just a bit,
Probably could.
you could have the view from the terminal building.
Yeah.
So I think that could be worked out to be a neat little corner right there.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Is there a minimum distance that fuel farm has to be from residences?
50 feet from a structure is what I.
50 feet?
50 feet from the point of dispensing.
That'd be in the local ordinance, and probably in the local zoning, planning and zoning codes. I mean, I would think.
I do know that the standard for aviation fuel, they say that the dispenser has to be a minimum of 50 feet from any structure.
He's talking about the storage tanks themselves from the residence.
Well, if you, from a residence, like one across the street, Jack, yeah, I don't think there's any limitations on that. Most of those tanks, if you put the right standards on, are gonna be double wall tanks with containment even for storage of
A lot safer than a service station across the street.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that?
Be a lot safer than a service station across the street.
Well, I mean, there's probably, 500-600 feet. I just making sure it wasn't like 1,000 feet, something like that.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm sorry for the
Do,
interruption.
do,
No,
Joe, do
that's
we
good.
need to discuss this since we really don't have it on the agenda anywhere while we're here? As a general, because we did change the fuel farm location and the FBO location, whether we flipped it back and forth or not.
We discussed it in the committee, I thought that was what came out of that committee, but I
Yeah.
think once you present it, this is the final plan. Once you present that as what we're.
Still not the
I'd
final.
be glad to make a motion that this is the latest and greatest in the direction we're attempting to go until something else comes up.
I'll second that
There's some
motion.
variables. Ref B.
Yeah, 505.
number.
There's still some variables in there, but I think what we really need to decide, is this where we want to put the fuel farm? And are we happy with moving the FBO however we locate it there? So we, generically speaking, can move down the road and know we have this extra hangar, which could be important sooner than later, because actually this P10 hangar right here would be the only one that could actually be built after this phase of the work's done and have access to it. So it could be a very valuable hangar if we keep it there. So I make a motion, we accept this as to where we are today. It's still subject for negotiation.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor of accepting this as our, do we have a second? We have a, all those in favor of this plan being
Where we are today.
to our plan of today, as of October 16th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Right point, yes. All right, now, this, the review and approval of the resolution supporting FAA AIP 2019 funding. This is our capital plan that we're gonna do in 2019. Hank, briefly go over what we plan on doing.
All right. As y'all know, last year, the capital improvement plan showed for 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, doing all reimbursement of your entitlement funds for $150,000. That was submitted to the FAA, therefore, the only thing that was allocated, and they kind of go from this year, they look at the next year to start figuring out how they're gonna allocate money. So, with what was being sent on the CIP for last year was just $150,000 that they were allocated for 2019. We're gonna submit up, I talked to Kevin with the FAA. He said, go ahead and submit for the projects that we want to submit for. The projects that I have listed is to extend that access road from the new access road that's there back out towards 13, so that you could get
Behind the hangars.
behind the hangars and go all the way to where the fuel farm is, to stop right there where Vince is at, yes.
But not tied into 13.
Well, we would still tie it, but y'all would have to, that would be something that's not FAA eligible. They only pay for one entrance, so we can call that an access road all the way back around to the end of the new ramp. But the little tie-in to 13 would have to be something that's just not FAA eligible. Small,
That doesn't include these.
those will be constructed whenever you get ready to build, T-hangers,
Okay.
which those are FAA eligible.
But that's not in the money.
That's not part of this 2019. The cost of that, just a rough number, we're about $400,000 to construct that access road from the access road all the way around to the fuel farm. Then the other project was to rehabilitate the apron on the west side where all the fod's coming up. That one had a total project cost of about $609,000 after do engineering, environmental, and everything else.
And that starts where? Where does that start?
That starts at the far north end of the west ramp
Okay.
and comes all the way down to where the terminal building, that ramp where the terminal building ends and goes down the hill to the,
So it's not in front of the new hangars?
No, it's not in front of the new
Or
ramp.
the T-hangars?
No, it's only on the terminal ramp,
And
which
was that the
is,
first thing built at the airport?
I think so.
And it's probably never been rehabilitated?
I'm sure it's been rehabilitated before. It was actually rebuilt whenever they, or rehabbed whenever they, built the new runway.
Oh.
Is when it, so that's, what was that, 04, 05 or something, 01?
Would that structurally make that a more sound, we had some questions, that'll make that so larger jets?
You'd have the capability to support a little bit larger aircraft. Probably, the idea would be, if it's doable, to like mill off 1 inch and put back 2. you gain an inch, and if you can afford it, mill off one and put back three. You know, but what we got set up
Be above
is,
the buildings for long.
yeah, that's the problem. You'd have to see how it impacts the existing buildings, whether or not you're gonna run water into the front door. You know, the only way you're gonna strengthen it outside of that is to stay away from those areas and try to redirect drainage by paving certain ways, try to get it going back down the hill or away from the buildings. If you can get it to where, it may be that ramp sheds back toward the taxiway, and if it does, it's not a problem.
What's that 5/6 that you're talking about for 600,000?
What's that,
What is that fix?
It would be a mill 2 inch and put 2 inches back, crack seal, restrike, remark.
What they would take out, put back?
Right, but what we would like to do would be essentially take out a little bit, and put more back, so you get more structural capability. But that's the area that would be done.
So all in, we're about $1,100,000?
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, we already got a state grant put in for you for the terminal building. But that's a separate grant. There's no federal participation in the terminal building. That's just a state grant. That would be 50-50. Could be 50-50, but normally they'll do a 50-50 up to 250,000. But sometimes.
This is what's on the agenda on the 21st,
Yeah.
this approval of this.
So this, essentially what it'll be, is this will be the packet that goes in, and now that FAA runs everything through ALDOT, this whole packet will be basically shoved in the new CIP with all the next 5 years projects, with estimated costs and everything on them. That'll go in, and then, when we hit send, the mayor will get a message that that they approve basically going forward with the pre-application, and she just hits it and it accepts it and goes. But we did break out instead of doing one project to do the access road and the improvements to the west ramp, we broke it into 2 projects. That way, if the FAA can find the money for at least one, we can do just one. You know what I'm saying? But if he can get the money to do all, he'll get the money to do all. But just kind of depends, because it kind of, when we took everything off the list last year and wanted to go for reimbursement, now the only thing that was there was your entitlement money, which was $150,000, so it knocks you out of discretionary pot. And the other thing that we're putting in for is that supplemental discretionary, that $1 billion money, which is 100% money. But
That's what the mayor asked about. She saw the $200 million supplemental FAA, and she's been emailing back, can we get some of that? My sense of it is we can't get any of that, but we certainly go.
yeah, it's gonna be hard to get it because Fairhope it's not what they consider a priority airport. Meaning, if it was, then you'd have a stronger likelihood of getting it. I actually had an airport that was considered a priority airport, and they had a project that was on the shelf ready to bid. We went out, bid it real quick, got prices on it, submitted it up, and it didn't get approved. But Huntsville got 29 million. So, from what I found out, it turns out that money, according to what was said at the aviation conference, where that money came from was the legislator not approving to raise the price of PSEs at commercial services. And what they were trying to do was get a bill put forth that would raise the PFC, the passenger facility charge, on every passenger from $4.75 to $8. But when they didn't get that, then they decided, okay, well, we'll give you $1 billion. Well, if it's based on PFC charges, guess what Fairhope don't have? It's PFC charges.
Not very much.
So I think that $1 billion is more suited to the ones that have commercial service. But it's not to say you're not gonna get it. It's just the likelihood is a little bit slim. But we need to put in, because it is 100% money. That's better than 90%, and it'd be a waste not put in.
Well, and what we need to do to get this approved is we need Josh had drafted a resolution for authorizing the approval of matching funds in connection with the fiscal year 2019 AIP approval. So what I need is I'll make a motion. We need a second to move this forward. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of signing this resolution authorizing, asking for money for the 2019 AIP program, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Let's see. The next thing, Vince, you're gonna talk about the Review and approval of request for qualifications for airport engineers.
Sure, Joe put this together, it's just a notice to consultants about your experience in airport planning and engineering consultant services, and we're supposed to do this every 5 years, and Joe asked Bill Pennington and I to review this. We both have. We like what it says. We got one typo in there, we're gonna fix that. This is gonna be sent out pretty much all over a pretty good region around the state, and a good circle there. Advertise, and we're gonna take qualifications, and it spells out the points that you're giving, kind of like we were talking about on the bid. It spells out how many points you get for each section that you're qualified in. Only thing I would suggest adding is one, I think Bill changed his phone number. And then two, if you got any questions there, it says you can call Bill or myself, and we need to put a deadline in there of like, you have 30 days to make a proposal after advertisement, but your questions have to end like 20 days after the proposal. That way, in the last 10 days, all the questions are to be asked, and we can answer them to
And I'm gonna put
everybody.
in there something in there that they have to be done in email, so we have
Yep.
a
And that'd be great, that if it's done by an email, we have a paper trail.
we have a paper trail.
So,
Okay?
Bill and I are making a recommendation that we send this out.
Okay, and I've got it in Word, I'll make those changes tonight, get y'all a clean copy. We'll have to work with Josh to actually send it out, if you will, to the newspapers or whatever, but we'll move forward with that. Okay?
And this is something we are supposed to do every 5 years, and
And
it has
we're-
nothing to
and
do
you're
with
like-
Volker. We like Volker and like what they're doing,
Yeah.
but we still need to do this from a legality standpoint.
I have a motion, can we make that a motion?
I'll
then?
make that a motion.
I'll second.
And all those in favor of, go ahead.
Discussion. A motion subject to the modifications you just outlined and
Yes, ma'am.
additions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, all right, all those in favor of the motion as modified, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. Flight line managers report. Thank you. This is David Shearer.
Essentially, no new news other than the cameras. We're at the final stage of the camera package to be presented. We should have Verscience input probably in the next day or so. Now I'll get with you, Joe, on what we ended up with, but I'm looking at about 12K plus maybe 5K in incidentals for the entire package.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm gonna say this here.
Yeah.
We agreed to do 15,000, but that's when I thought it was 40,000. So I really wanna just split it if that's.
We're gonna go in half.
Okay, that's
Or
fair.
whatever we agreed
Okay.
to, yeah. The idea is we would pick up.
That's just my Irish nature.
Yeah.
That's the way, okay.
So, and the plan is to get it done in the next, month, before the end of the year.
Sounds like a plan.
No other updates on anything other than the maintenance and upkeep of the Thompson backup generator, which is new on the list.
Well, we've got one out there. We need
I
to come
know,
up with a plan.
and actually, the fire department just put a new generator
I
in.
saw that.
And I got contacts of the people that put it in, and their service installer and rep. So that, if we need to contact somebody to
Well,
look at.
I'd like to, I mean, a couple months ago it didn't work. And so that would be a big screw up if we had a lightning storm and the lights
Yep.
were out and it didn't
Yep.
work. So.
So the gentleman I talked to was familiar with the equipment and does service the equipment.
Okay.
I actually talked to the installer at the fire department.
Okay, well, if we could work out a deal where they serviced them both at the same time and we could get a little bit of discount.
So I've got both of those contacts if you want me to
appreciate that.
forward them to you, but I'll take care of that if you'd like.
That's something that.
The other
just-
thing is the taxiway and runway lights. We had to put out a note for, they're intermittent, they went out again. They're coming and going, so I'm not sure how that needs to be addressed, but it needs to be
Well,
addressed.
I got an update from Kyle.
Okay,
I
please.
sent him a text. So just the whole lighting situation. All the parts we ordered 2 weeks ago are installed and working. All runway lights are working, but 3 of them, all taxiway lights are working. The reels and the PAPI are all working. He said we had another report that all lights would not stay on but a few seconds. No TAM's been issued. I'm working with Bill Smith Electric to resolve, cannot duplicate the problem.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes they don't respond. And I don't
So,
know
so
why.
the alternative is this is this box, and we've replaced one of the four things it could be.
Right.
We're gonna try to replace another police piece.
And then you get to the bigger.
Then if we can't get it fixed, then we're gonna have to just buy this new box. It's like $3,300. And that controls the automatic.
The automatic lights on, lights off,
automatic
the mic
lighting.
key.
So, I don't wanna do that, but I mean, that's, you know, we can't just, if something's in there, it's like fixing a car, if you can't get it fixed, you can't get it
If
fixed.
you can't duplicate it,
Can't,
I mean,
so that hurts, that's a big deal. I mean,
It is.
it shuts the airport down at night for selling fuel.
yeah.
So it's a big deal, so we
So we
need,
need to-
this is something we need to move quickly on. And I've had that conversation with Kyle and,
Okay.
okay?
Because it
That's
would,
no other news besides that. Any questions?
Yes. Could you give us an update on your preparations for the overflow from the AOPA flying?
We had the fuel and the manpower, so we're ready for the overflow. We haven't had any requests for tours or any other solicitation for any extracurricular activities.
What if people come in, what about extra notice to the rental car agencies?
Well, as long as we know in advance, we arrange for the rental cars to be there.
Mhm.
We have the 2 courtesy cars for immediate use, as long as they're available and somebody doesn't have them out. If we get advance notice, we have an agreement with the rental car agency in Fairhope, and we can have cars there waiting.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's still valid with the hurricane. You can't get a rental car right now. There's
They're
none.
hard to find.
They're none.
I haven't tried, so,
Uber services the airport.
yeah.
We've lined up all we have reservations for at Jack Edwards at our place, and so have the other 2 FBOs, and the rental car company claims they still have some, but they don't on a normal weekend, so I'm very skeptical, like you.
Well, I'll
did.
look into it.
It's not gonna be a lot
I'll
of.
go ahead and
Yeah,
check to
that'd be a
make sure.
good thing to look into.
One more thing. When we go into the financial report, what I asked, and I'm assuming that we do what I call minor capital improvements. There's a list in your handout. Or do y'all have any minor capital improvements that you think?
We had, Joe was supposed to submit a list. I think he went for reskinning on one of the hangars. Some of the stuff
We've
he,
got that.
that
We've got
wasn't,
that on there.
that wasn't, I considered minor. But I'll make sure by the end of this week you get something, Joe, on
I mean, 'cause we-
actual minor
Yeah,
improvements.
What about the pursuit of the military fuel contract?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, is there any assistance you need from the airport authority or anything like that? I mean, this is an important thing we want to make sure that we go after.
yeah, we actually, Joe and I have been in a meeting with World Fuel on it. And as far as I know, after that first meeting, there hasn't been a follow-up. We haven't had any further information.
Well, we don't want to miss the
I was
deadline for
discouraged. I mean,
application.
I'll put it in perspective, I was discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm not
obviously
sure
with.
it's kind of a closed game almost.
Right.
It's,
With the military fuel contact, the actual airmen have to solicit for us to be added to the list. So the wings that we deal with have to ask for Fairhope to be added on. World Fuel wasn't real optimistic. Joe has contacted a few people, but we can't solicit to be part of the bidding or part of the operation. The military has to solicit for us, so we have to get a full bird colonel or a flight wing or somebody to actually say. So we have
Where's that?
presented.
Where's that?
Yeah, we have presented World Fuel with the airport amenities and the aspects of the airport that should be advantageous to the military.
And I called, a couple of years ago, when we had all the issues with noise, we did make some real contacts.
Yeah.
And I called all those people and asked them if they would help. And they were kind of lukewarm. They said they would it's actually with the Colonel asked the Defense Logistics Agency to do it. That's where the contract actually is. I think we're still in the ballgame, but it's just barely.
There's actually an open bid you can do online for that. You just have to meet their qualifications.
Can you get that information to him?
Are you working through military logistics, or are you working through GSA?
It was through military logistics.
Any help anybody can give us, we.
Do y'all do Milliport testing on the fuel now?
Do what?
Milliport testing? It's a
Do-
test you gotta do for the military. It's Milliport testing.
Oh, there's,
It's a finer grade of your water testing.
yeah, we actually do, all the requirements we do on the fuel testing now is requirements for the Phillips 66 where we do specific gravity, the white bucket and the checking. I don't know what test is involved for the military. But the capabilities we have and what we do should be adequate to what they require. Our last inspection, we got 100% from the.
They have a specific Milliport testing guideline you have to follow and submit it and turn it in. It's gotta be like 90 days track.
Have you tried for it, Vince? Have you?
No. It
I
was
just heard
secured
it's
when
very
I got the
difficult.
airport. It comes up next March.
That's a new, we were thinking it came up in October.
No, contract, the bids are supposed to come out, the submittal's supposed to come out in December, and the bid's supposed to go in sometime in January, I think. And it takes effect April the 1st.
That's good.
Yep.
So we're still in the bond.
Okay.
All of them are new at the same time.
So the information that we received
The
from-
government loves to do everything on the same day so they can get behind.
from World Fuel that we weren't allowed to submit a bid unless we were solicited to do so. Is this incorrect?
I think so. I'm not gonna say World Fuel's wrong publicly, because I don't know what World Fuel has or has not done with it.
If there's an open bid process, we need to take
Do
advantage
you
of it.
bid by the gallon? Is that how you bid?
It's your price over cost.
Uh,
Whatever you're willing to furnish it at over cost. And you gotta meet all their standards.
That would be the one thing they will require is a crew area for briefings and things like that. I think Joe and I mentioned that.
Well,
It might be a good idea to think about maybe putting a temporary building up somewhere that, so, I mean, if that's a requirement they want, so, we'll have a temporary building where the crews can brief and eat and all that other stuff. I think that is.
Any information would be helpful. On the fuel prices, we were told that there was a committee, the logistic committee that sets the fuel prices for you. And it does the price that the airmen pay when they come in. It's an average between the previous year and this year or something.
One's a fuel card,
Yeah.
and you have to be asked for that one. The other one is a fuel contract where they can come to you and fuel, and they will send them in your area to fuel. You get some of the T6s we see flying
Right.
around will land, but they have a choice where they want to go. Depends on whether your pizza's better than what's down at Jack Ace's or not. And they can choose where they go and use their actually debit card.
Right.
The other is a military fuel contract where you get paid, which is predominantly helicopters, a fee over cost that you bid on.
Well, any information that I could be given to help us along would be well appreciated.
Anything else?
I have nothing else.
Okay.
You had on him the AOPA, that's not this weekend, but next weekend. It's Friday and Saturday at Jack Edwards Airport.
Yep.
They're expecting a pretty good crowd. Looks like the weather's supposed to be good too. Glad it's not this weekend.
That's right.
8% chance of rain about that.
And
So,
we're-
and they're still looking for volunteers. Is it you that got a group of volunteers?
Yep, to help
Yeah,
with the pancake breakfast.
well, actually, two things. I sent out a notice to our advisory pool of volunteers, and if they wanted to volunteer, and to the rest of you, if you wanted to volunteer. And one of our advisory pool members, David Keller, took the opportunity, and his daughter's school class is volunteering in mass for the pancake breakfast.
And that's where
on
they were
Sunday.
the shortest.
That's where they
Yeah.
were the shortest, and
That's-
he's
that's
already
neat.
put it all
Yeah.
in, and I'm gonna volunteer on Friday night, and see who else is volunteering, and also we will be putting updated airport brochures as well as the city visitors guide in all of the welcome bags for the event.
Pam's getting all that, and Jack Edwards said the more the merrier. They were happy to take it, so.
So we should be getting a lot of free publicity from that.
Okay.
And I'd like to give David Keller and Ben Montgomery kudos for helping me get that brochure updated and supplying new photos and using some of the drone footage in the updated brochure. They were great, they worked fast, and it looks very good.
Okay. Amy, are you ready to do the treasurer's report?
I'm ready to go.
No.
Yeah.
Amy wants to start doing that first.
Yeah, she does.
Amy, Amy's this is Amy's first meeting as treasurer, so.
Yeah,
They're usually not this long.
No, they're not.
No.
but I think, I mean, for me, I think you should finish out this fiscal year and then I'll
Okay.
start the report.
Well, this year, September 30th finishes it, and, you know, I put a couple of things in here. One, I put a summary of that, capital projects. I never got, this was without, David's input, but as a kind of a PowerPoint that says fence line cameras, $15,000, rescreen and improvements to the south hangar, $32,000. The big one is, we don't think about this, but the matching portion of our FAA grant is $140,000. I mean, that's real money, so, you know. We're gonna do a phase two, like we talked about. We'll do a phase two, not a phase one, but a phase two environmental study under the location of the fuel farm. So we'll basically document if there's any hydrocarbons under there. That's about $10,000. And we're saving $5,000 a month for a future general aviation terminal. So that's really our major expenses. There's also, I guess, we have a summary of, every month I get a summary of the ground maintenance and the facilities maintenance. That's attached here. Everything was ground maintenance except for the 770, which were some lights that it was misclassified, but we'll get that fixed. And finally, there's a budget in here. And that's really what I would like y'all to review the budget. And basically, this is kind of, in the columns, you've got the actual from last year, which basically these are unaudited numbers, but they're pretty close. I mean, basically, our total revenues next year, that's with the $320,000 from the city, is about $555,000. We have a $200,000 debt service payment next year. So our total, so after everything's said and done, we should make around $6,000. The variable, if you will, is our ground maintenance costs and our general aviation maintenance, basically things that break. Like runway lights and reskinning hangars and building bridges and pouring concrete and things like that. But pretty good budget. I mean, over the last 2 or 3 years, our revenues have increased pretty significantly, or probably $50,000. But at the same time, our appropriation from the city go from 428 to 320, Jack.
Good, going in the right direction. As soon as that gets to zero, we'll be good.
We're on our way, we're on our way.
100,000 a year.
So,
Are y'all taking, are you gonna have naming opportunities for the general aviation terminal? I have some suggestions, like the Vince Booth Memorial, or to write us a check, or a lot of zeros. No, we'll give it to you while you're,
well, Vince is gonna get us a number, but hope, we're gonna, when Vince gets us a number of how much it's gonna cost, we're gonna go ask people.
If I die tomorrow, I expect that to be named after me whenever it gets built.
Amy, anything else?
I got $50, I'll add to it.
I do have something else. On the way in, I was told that our city treasurer has resigned. So, that's a tough nut for us. He helps us, so we're gonna have to rethink how we do our accounting and maybe our audit. And Amy and I met with our bankers last Friday to get new signature cards, and now it's silly to, we're gonna have to do something else there. So anyway, that's a Jack.
That's why I was late.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, that's tough. So we'll have to rethink. I think Amy will be a great that's gonna be we're gonna have to really think through how we do things. My suggestion is if we can do it, I must say this: we ought to just move everything in house and move forward.
I think you should.
So
That'd be great.
I think you should.
I think we should.
So having said that, Jack, will you sign the 2 checks that we have to pay if we do?
While you're here.
Because you're the only other signatory of the, I'll have to think of the process, because there's some things that have to be integrated into the city.
Obviously, you're not left-handed.
Oh, goodness.
It's not gonna be pretty. I've had to do this a few times, so.
Those are just, we gotta pay bills, whether we have a, you know. The way it is now is there's 2 signatures required, Amy or myself, or Jack or the treasurer. So we don't have a treasurer anymore, so Jack will be the second party for a while.
So they're not gonna be able to verify his signature.
No, this is not looking good.
What?
I have to leave here since I have no other business that needs voting on.
No, do we, I mean, is any other business? I mean, I think we've pretty much knocked it around, haven't
Do
we?
you need to
Pretty
vote
good.
to accept the budget? Or is
What?
that already?
I talked about the budget. Do we want to make a motion to approve the budget?
I'd like to at least look at it.
Let's review
We've
it.
had it since last night.
Yeah,
Well-
let's review it and vote on it next month.
Yeah, let's review it and do it next time.
Because realistically, I mean, other than y'all see everything other than grounds you don't actually approve. I tell you what expenses we have, sometimes after the fact, because we have to keep the airport up, but everything else in there is pretty fixed. Power, professional fees, some travel, a little bit of travel, conferences and things like that. But look at it and really compare it from, basically compare it with the years in the past. It's pretty much level.
Okay.
Okay? So we will approve that budget next time.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Joe, you might want to even look into, just a thought real quick. I'm involved with a homeowners association that has a bookkeeper that takes care of our finances, and there are, 20 people paying dues monthly, and roughly, I don't know how many checks a month, 20 checks a month, probably more than what goes on with the airport authority. And that's, $120 a month. We pay about $120 a month for that service.
I think we had gone down the road with Kathy Calmetti, who I have some confidence in. She was recommended by Bryant with a similar situation.
And a similar price, if you could say.
But we haven't talked pricing, but I think $200 a month is probably a pretty good price. So, the big thing is the audit, Jack. Think about the audit. I wasn't happy last year how it turned out.
No, I
I'd like to
wouldn't
get my own audit if we could, but I would like your insights or your thoughts on that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I wasn't happy with it either. I think the airport authority got the short end of the stick.
Okay. Anybody from the audience wants to comment on anything?
I got one thing I was gonna ask while ago, but I forgot. As far as the subsequent years for the capital improvement plan, what we've got showing on 2020, 21, and 22 is reimbursement of the loan for the land. Is that what we want to submit in on, or is there some other project that?
This is personal. I'd like to take a break. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of work to me. I don't think there's anything else. We get these vertical structures built. I think Jack would like to see some of that debt paid down. So we'll take our discretionary money and pay down the entitlement money and pay down the debt.
Well, is this gray highlighted, concreted region on here, is that part of the 18-19 AIP? When is that?
18, 19, Jack is going to.
It's all this over here, right?
The
Yeah,
section.
the one that you were drawing on. So when is this gonna be?
That would be,
Unless we put it in
that would be when.
I'm looking 19-20, that's a big expense.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be, what the last 2 phases were.
That'd be about like the one we're fixing to do, because that's just that.
Yeah, that's probably, if I had to just throw a number out.
I don't know that we can can we afford to take a break? If we can get it, we go for it, don't we?
Jack,
But it needs to be on the, CIP. It needs to be on the CIP. And it's not to say that when you put it on the CIP, you're not committing yourself.
Right.
You're putting them on notice that this is what I want to do. And if that is the way you kind of want to go, it's probably worth sticking it on 2020.
Don't y'all think it needs to be on 19-20?
I'd
can
love to see it
always,
finished as fast as it can be finished, and then we're done.
Right.
And
I mean, all of this.
and like you just
this,
said, we're not
Or
committed
asphalt.
to it, so if these aren't happening, then we don't have to go with that.
Right.
But
But if these are happening, we're gonna regret not.
I agree.
so when do you have to turn it in?
I have to turn it in, it's gotta be in AlDOT and in their, AMP system and signed by the mayor by November 1.
Okay, then let's rethink, let's still have a quorum. Let's the complete build out.
Okay.
For the next, because we can always turn the
have
money, we can always turn the money down, can't we?
Because this is basically.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't
We don't
submit a
ask
grant.
them.
Yeah.
It's just, what they wanna see, what Kevin's gonna look for is on 2019, he's gonna be looking at what's coming 2020 when he's starting to budget in 19 for 20. And if you just have 150,000 for reimbursement, that's all he's gonna be setting up for and prepping for the next year.
Hank,
I'd like to
if
see
we don't
Hank.
get that road coming around here, this is just asphalt work, literally just asphalt.
There's some dirt, but not a lot. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, a
little bit,
it's
should
a
be
little
almost
bit.
there.
We're not
Right.
putting a French drain in the
Yeah, I
middle
don't
of
think
all
we-
that.
Right, well, it does have one trench drain right down the middle, right here.
Does it really?
Yeah, cause everything has to go to that pond, so this thing's designed to run like that. And then it goes into, that 60-inch pipe,
Well, didn't
and
you
it comes
do all
out.
that? Is that Bobby before you left?
No, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
And I ain't got, I don't know, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, because it's
Right.
just another, this is just rev, whatever,
Right.
but, we talked about shade hangers, and, down here might be a good place for shade hangers.
Yeah, when you get further towards the fuel farm, which is
Yeah.
several years away, but there's, a layout for T-hangers, shade hangers.
Yeah.
And this is nothing in stone, this is just kinda like a plan. You can change up that from.
Okay. Well, I
you can
like this
even-
a lot. I
Yeah, you
like
can
what
even
you're doing.
move, you can
I
move
think
this
that plan
stuff.
is now really pretty good.
Very mature plan now.
I love this move. This is the move I like. Moving the terminal and the FBO to
We gotta have an
there.
observation deck, or, I'm gonna get strung up out here.
We gotta have an observation. You're gonna check, are we in the? It's
gonna be the hang loose thing that's got my name.
As long as we stay below, I think, I'm good to say right now, as long as all the buildings from the far west edge of the apron, so where the new taxiway, parallel taxiway is, from that point, as long as you're restricted to less than 28 feet in height, you should be fine. And the further you go away, every 7 feet you go, you gain a foot, so you should be good. I don't see you having anything.
We could be 35 back on this.
Right, back over here. And we can fine tune those numbers once the apron and all is laid out.
Pretty big angle, so.
So we wanna,
Observation deck.
we wanna change the CIP for 2020 to finish the build out of the east apron.
Well, I would put it in two phases. That's a $4 million project.
No, probably not. I mean, it's probably closer to $1.5 million, $2 million to
Okay.
finish paving that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
And I mean, you just put it in there. I can get the numbers and then send them to y'all
And
if
the
y'all want
danger
me
is
to.
not doing it soon
Yeah,
enough, and then
that's
it's more dirt.
Right, yeah.
Then it goes up by 500,000.
Yeah.
From a political standpoint, the FAA just got their 5-year funding, but, we might change president in 2 years, we might not.
No, I think we
might stop.
I think
Let's
we
get
ought to
going.
continue going forward. It's just that there was some, we wanted to pay the debt down too, and we can't do both.
I think that this aids in paying the debt down, because you're opening up all of the east side to revenue.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna change the land acquisition in 20 to the finalization of the east development area. All right, what do we wanna do on 21?
We'll finish the tax.
Well, the one thing we gotta start looking at is rehabbing your runway. And the other thing is you're gonna need, because now that the east side is now gonna be able to support heavier aircraft than what your runway can support, you need to look at building your runway up. So that's a good project to put on there for 2021. You still got another year to think about it,
What
but
is our runway limit, 100,000 pounds?
60,000,
See, I mean, we're talking about building hangars for
80,000.
and they can't land there, so, I mean,
That's why I'm out. I can't get a
How
hangar, I
much
can't
is
Can't
How much
land.
is the runway, how much is the runway rebuilding?
I hate it when
Well,
you do those
probably,
problems.
I mean, I don't know offhand, I could run a number,
But I couldn't even tell you what one of those planes weighs, man.
probably close to 4 million.
Okay.
It's a chunk of money, I mean, it's a lot of asphalt out there, that thing's 75 foot
So you
wide or
build
100
down
foot
an inch
wide.
and build it up too?
Yeah, we'd probably come up 4.
Wow.
Well, I know at Baymonette, which is not near the size runway as Fairhope, they're 80 feet, not 100. Ain't fair. We're 100 here, ain't
100 feet wide.
Yeah.
We're a lot wider.
So they were 80 feet and 5,500 feet long, and that was 1.5 million.
And how far, 2 inch?
That was putting in a 2-inch lift.
So we're talking about $6.5 million.
Yeah, you're talking a pretty good chunk of money. At least 4 million, I'd say.
How many hangars y'all building up in Baymonette?
20.
Wow.
Really?
And eight in Foley.
8 in Foley, yeah.
22
Who's,
hangars?
who's building the ones in Bay Minette?
M.W. Rogers.
I mean, the city's building them, who's funding them?
Oh, yeah, well, they did get a state grant,
Okay.
for 250, so did Foley.
Yeah.
Without the state grant, neither one of them would have been able to do it. But they are funding it wholly on themselves. Baymonette did get a federal grant for their access taxiways to access the hangars. So did, Foley did. Baymonette elected to do all theirs on their own and then seek reimbursement later.
Okay. Any other business?
Well, are we good with runway strengthening for 2021? Like I say, he's not gonna be looking for that.
time being.
For the time being, but we need to have a placeholder in there for now.
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be the biggest amount of money if we change our mind.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Then I would, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting at,
Any public comments?
well, I think any public comment? Bill, public comments?
I got some cards, but,
Any comments? Okay.
I'm in favor of adjourning. I'm gonna go to.
All right, all in favor of adjourning, let's adjourn at 5:50.